What happens when the most inept and horned up police force find themselves in over their heads after a trip to the Blue Lagoon? Well, before you think Steve Guttenberg will show up and save the day, guess again, because we're not that lucky. No, instead we take on the monumental task of trying to prove to you that Samurai Cop is not that bad. Welcome to this edition of It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. Now, I've mentioned before that on this show, we kind of like a bit of a challenge, but I don't think we have had as much of a challenge on this show since the episode where we talked about Jim Cotta, because this week we are talking about Samurai Cop. We knew this day would come. And it's finally here. And here to join in the celebration of all that is Samurai Cop is our good friend, Sean Faust. Sean, welcome to the show for the first time. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to be here to make my debut on your show with arguably one of the top 3 so bad it's perfect movies.
Oh, there's a pantheon of films in that kind of so bad it's good. I mean, I've seen a lot of comparisons to The Room when it comes to this movie. But as far as it's so bad it's good films, where does this rank for you?
This is number 3 for me, with number 1 being tied with The Room and Miami Connection. And if you tell me that The Room is so bad it's good, I got to tell you, to this day, I find nothing bad about The Room. I think it's exactly what it should be. I don't know what that thing is that it should be, but it exactly is that. And I'm entertained every time I watch it. Sometimes I want to talk along with the dialogue and say it as it happens, but I don't want to ruin that delivery that is just so perfect, that makes The Room just this special. I can't even find the proper adjective to define how much I really love The Room and don't think it's a bad movie. But in the grand scheme of so bad it's good, Samurai Cop is a solid number 3.
I'll admit that when the initial idea for this podcast kind of came to be, there were a couple of movies that were on my list where I'm like, I know I'm going to have to go down this road eventually. Samurai Cop was definitely on the list. I know The Room is going to be another one of those future episodes, which I find kind of funny too, because anyone who knows Samurai Cop also knows that there is a Samurai Cop 2 that also happens to star Tommy Wiseau. So it's almost like, is this the cinematic universe of The Room? And if you think about it that way, I'm kind of excited for it.
Then Tommy Wiseau's the villain in Samurai Cop 2 has to be Johnny in Purgatory, or, Johnny somehow survives the gunshot, the self-inflicted gunshot at the end. Spoiler for The Room. Sorry, folks. And because if you keep in mind, too, he does shoot himself, but you see his body move after he shoots himself. Therefore, Johnny is probably still alive, and he's pissed off. Maybe they're blanks. Maybe he is so angry at Samurai Cop that what's Samurai Cop's name? Joe
Marshall.
Joe Marshall, that's it. Yeah, Joe. I always forget because they keep calling him Joe Samurai or Officer Samurai. Yeah, I mean, and Bai Ling. We can't forget that Bai Ling is also in the sequel. Mm-hmm. I really hope, I haven't seen it yet, but I hope that she makes some comments about liking people's eyes, because the only big budget movie I can think of that she had been in is The Crow. Mm-hmm. So you've got the villains are Bai Ling, and I guess they couldn't get Michael, I can't remember his last name, but he's such a damn good actor. He was the villain in The Crow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I loved him. He was great.
It's Strange Days. But, well, anyway, yeah, they couldn't get him. And, so I would love to see a Samurai Cop 2 at some point when I have time.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll make you this promise right now that if you are willing to go down that road, we will cover Samurai Cop 2: Deadly Vengeance in a future episode, because having seen the trailer for that, you've got a lot of the original cast. You've got, like you mentioned, Bai Ling, Tommy Wiseau, and a bunch of mattress actresses. That would be, I would go down that road. I'm willing to take that journey with you, and I can't believe I'm just signing up for that one. But that might be a future episode. But we are here to talk about the original Samurai Cop. So before we talk about this classic, and you can kind of hear the quotation fingers there, we're going to take this movie and trailerize it. Take the guerrilla filmmaking style of the 70s, the video game music soundtrack of the 80s, and a budget that makes canon films look extravagant. And you have a 90s movie. Wait, 90s? Did I read that right? This came out in the 90s, huh? Okay then. You have a 90s movie that looks to break the mold by looking nothing like a 90s movie. Enter Joe Marshall, a cop so legendary, his backstory needs to be explained twice. A highly cultured man of mystery who speaks Japanese so fluently that he never speaks a word of Japanese. A man so highly skilled in the ways of the samurai, he punches his way out of every situation. And a cop so suave that his every attempt to get laid is so pathetic they can be featured on disasters caught on camera. Robert Zadar and Matt Hannon star in Samurai Cop, a movie so powerful it can make you believe that every student film you made with a high-end camera look better in comparison. Unrated, because no one stuck around long enough to give it a rating.
I think you nailed it.
I think so. I think that's pretty much better than the trailer that was actually out. Let's go through who's in this guy. This stars Matt Hannon, who nowadays goes by Matthew Corradis in his second ever film, Robert Zadar, Mark Fraser, Melissa Moore, Gerald Okamura, and Janice Farley. Now, those names probably don't mean anything to our average listeners. So let me go through where you might have actually seen some of these people. Robert Zadar, we mentioned him last week actually on the show because he, of course, was in Mobsters. But he was also in Tango and Cash and Cherry 2000 with a young Melanie Griffith. So there are movies that I've actually heard of on his filmography. Interestingly enough, when it came to Matt Hannon / Matt Corradis, this was his last film until Samurai Cop 2. He did have a role as a Serbian soldier in an episode of JAG in 1995. But here's the thing. He actually spent time in prison for armed art theft robbery. So there's a reason why we didn't see him for a while. He's out now, and the funny thing is, he's on Twitter, and he kind of embraces the whole Samurai Cop thing, so kudos to him for that one. Mark Fraser actually had an uncredited role in Once Upon a Time in America, starring Robert De Niro. Melissa Moore, who played Peggy, starred in Sorority House Massacre 2, and as I'm going through her filmography, I'm like, okay, I might have heard of that one, and that's about it. Cameron. This is all she's listed as. Cameron, the red-headed assassin. Real name, Roberta Jean Oppenheimer. Star Trek fans are going to be very familiar with her because she was listed as Ensign Kellogg in about 43 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. And she was also frequently used as a stand-in for Gates McFadden, and I can kind of see that a little bit. She was also in Generations and First Contact, but she also did some stunt work on Pulp Fiction. So far, we're looking at possibly the most accomplished actor on this entire crew. Until you get to Gerald Okamura, who also starred in Big Trouble in Little China as the, and I'm quoting this from IMDb, he is credited as the Wing Kong Hatchet Man. He was also in Hot Shots Part 2 as the corrupt kickboxing ref. He had uncredited roles in Mortal Kombat, Blade, and he was also the Hardmaster in G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, which, in my opinion, is actually the best G.I. Joe film, of which I never thought I'd say that.
I'm going to have to go ahead and... I don't think there is yet a good G.I. Joe film.
I mean, if we're grading on a curve of the three, between Snake Eyes, the second one, and then Rise of Cobra.
Oh, shoot. I still have not yet seen Snake Eyes, but no, I will still also go back to the 1987 G.I. Joe, the movie.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
which introduces Serpentor and Cobra. La, 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 la. So stupid.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Don Johnson's credit of shame on his filmography.
Flint.
There is actually someone who is a very accomplished actor on this movie. And unfortunately, I don't even think it was his voice when they did the ADR. And that was Warren Stevens, listed as the man in the film lab, which that film lab scene just showed up out of nowhere. He was in, and this is quite the list here. Stroker Ace, The Barefoot Contessa, Forbidden Planet. He was in episodes of ER, Twilight, Falcon Crest, Quincy M.E., MASH, Mission Impossible, The Virginian, Bonanza. Like, the list goes on. His filmography was huge, and they didn't even really use his voice, which I find just, shake my damn head on that one. This was the only film for Janice Farley, who played Jennifer. And when it came to Cranston Kimura, he only appeared in Samurai Cop films. So, I mean, there's your backstory as to the kind of cast you're dealing with here. This was written and directed by Amir Shervin. This was the last film he would ever write or direct. And he passed away in 2006. This is it. This is the swan song. This is the curtain call for Amir Shervin. When you when you when you put it that way, it's just like, oh. But when you realize that he's an Iranian filmmaker and he came over to the United States to make some Hollywood movies, there's something sweet about that. But this is kind of, this is it. This was his legacy. According to IMDb, this film did not have a budget listed. And I've seen enough interviews with Matt Hannon where he said, they were probably running out of money. Has a worldwide gross of $384,000, almost $385,000. No budget was listed. And I wonder how much of that is in like midnight review showings kind of thing, like where it's the kind of stuff that theaters that would show movies like The Room and late night showings of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I'm just curious. Did you ever see this in the theater?
I have not seen it in the theater, and a friend bought the Blu-ray for me a few years ago after I fell in love with it on Amazon.
I could see this being the kind of movie where they do show this in like late night, midnight showings. I mean, actually, I would love to see this as like there are some drive-in theaters that are still out there today where they'll do like on a summer night, they'll do 4 movies. So you're playing movies right until like the sunrise. And if this was the last movie, I would be awake for this one. Absolutely.
Most definitely. But what would the other 3 be besides, all right, so you got The Room, Miami. Oh, you know what? Hard Ticket to Hawaii.
Right.
So we've got, let's just do a festival. We'll call it a film festival of this wonderful writer-director. So we've got Hard Ticket to Hawaii. We have Samurai Cop. No, but we could also throw in Samurai Cop 2. Mm-hmm. And then just for the hell of it, something with Robert Zadar, like maybe Tango and Cash, because
I love Tango and Cash though. Tango and Cash is like a guilty pleasure of mine.
Why is it a guilty pleasure? I hate that phrase, and let me tell you why I hate that phrase. When you say guilty pleasure, you're saying you give a crap what other people think about things that you enjoy. They don't pay your bills, nor do they wipe your butt, my friend. You can say that Tango and Cash is just a great movie from beginning to end, even some of that stupid crap in the middle, but. Yeah.
You know what? I would actually put it up in my top 5 Sylvester Stallone films, right up there with Oscar. But that's just me. Oscar is just a gem. Let's
stop. Or my mom will shoot.
Oh God. Well, that's Estelle Getty right there. That's not a Stallone film. That's an Estelle Getty film.
Do you know that's a prank on Stallone by Schwarzenegger?
Really?
Yeah, Schwarzenegger had it out there because Stallone and Schwarzenegger used to try to go after each other's roles because they really were in that kind of a competition. And somehow it got to Stallone that Schwarzenegger was going to do this movie. It was going to be really huge. So he's like, no. I'll undercut him and I'll take the gig. And then he got the gig, read the script, and regretted it immediately. And then he found out it was a joke.
Oh, God.
Yeah, talk about a great prank.
I love that. Now I have to watch that movie again just to see what his acting was like through that film, knowing what he was dealing with. But he got to work with Estelle Getty, so that's okay.
There you go, yeah.
Let's talk about the critic reception on this one. I found this fascinating quote by Jim Varell in Paste. All right. The quote is this: "The whole thing looks like a movie aliens would make if they were lacking some sort of crucial understanding of how human beings communicated with one another." I'm not good. I might actually agree with that one because arguably the toughest thing with this movie is the script and the dialogue.
I'm going to agree with that because most of the best responses are from Frank just kind of doing facial tics, especially the scene with the nurse. Mm-hmm. But, the sergeant does have the best dialogue. Also, he's the best actor in the film. And I do call it a film, not a movie, because I do think that there was some heart put into this, and it was bound to be something better had it had a budget.
I would be curious what to see if they had Golden Globus money, because that's kind of the era that you're looking at. If they had Golden Globus Canon Films money, it probably would be more akin to what like American Ninja was back. It
only would have been another $500-$600 added to their budget though at this point, because Masters of the Universe pretty much used up everything of theirs. But yeah, if they had some Golden Globus money, just think, what would the soundtrack be like? Because you look at things like Breakin'. We could have had Stallone in it possibly instead of Matt.
Possibly.
Yes, yeah.
Well, especially when you realize that Matt was Stallone's bodyguard back in the 80s.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Let's talk about the critic rating, though. There is a 47% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes out there. And while that may seem high, there is a fan base for so bad it's good movies. There is no official tomatometer because there is only 3 critic ratings on this. So I pulled up my calculator, I got my slide rule out, I did some math here. If you take the 3 critic ratings that are there, 2 of them are 1 out of 5 reviews. So you can take a look at that and say, okay, well, that's 20% each. With one of them being a 0 out of 5. So that's a 0, obviously. So with math included, that sits at about a 13% tomatometer, which makes this actually one of the higher rated films that we have talked about on this show. If you're a critic, what are you rating this?
I'm going to give this, let's see. I would have to say, honestly, I would say about 3.5 out of 5 stars.
Okay.
For reaction shots alone, and for arguably some of the best death acting in cinematic history.
Nothing will top Paul Rubens in Buffy the Vampire Slayer for that death scene that went on and on and on through about the entire second third of the film.
And the post-credit scene.
Right? Oh, one of the best post-credit scenes, too, from that era. But let's get to the breakdown of this film. And we have to start with Joe Marshall himself, Matt Hannon. Look, I get that this is only his second film, so I'm not going to pick on anyone's acting because even if I did, it's still a world's better acting job that I could ever do. Apparently, the story is he walked into their office to audition, and Amir took one look at him and said, "You are exactly what I'm looking for." And I kind of don't disagree with this because when you think about someone who's supposed to be a samurai and a cop and around that era of filmmaking, he fits the mold perfectly.
Yes, he's got the Martin Riggs look, so he's got that familiar look, but he's also kind of bulkier. So he's got that I've been training really hard on stuff and have muscles. I can hold a sword. And if you look at him, look at the way he holds a gun and fires a gun or the way he holds a sword. He just looks right.
obviously in like late 80s, early 90s, he had that WWE physique, and in some cases even better. Like if you put Matt Hannon, that 1991 Matt Hannon besides someone like the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, I'm like, yeah, Matt Hannon's going to wipe the mat with him. He was an imposing figure, and had this been a good movie, I could see it of actually being one of those things that catapulted him not into stardom per se, but at least in enough action movies to make a really good go of it. And we need to talk about something here. We need to talk about the wig.
I said this morning, and I'm sorry to interrupt you with this, but the very first shot we get of him is a reshoot with this wig that they couldn't even cut properly, I should say.
With the hat almost like stapled on, like the hat that was too small for the wig. So for those of you who have not seen it, when they were filming this film, and they would film it in like chunks kind of thing, because I guess money was an issue in trying to get this whole thing filmed. And then they took a long break, and Matt thought like, oh, okay, we're done filming. It's all good. It's just going to go to post. And then he shows up like a week later, and he had gotten his hair cut. And, Amir's like, what the hell did you do? You ruined my movie. So apparently they got in the car, drove to like downtown, got a woman's wig that was close enough to his hair color, and started to put it on. There's a fight scene in this film.
Yes.
with Okamura, and the wig falls off, and like Okamura puts it back on his head, and it made the cut. Like that is, and the hair grows and shortens within the same scene. And part of that is the way it was filmed, because apparently a lot of like the one-liners of dialogue and all that they had to go back and reshoot was shot in a completely separate room like months later. So scenes like in the Blue Lagoon restaurant, which I laughed at the fact they called it the Blue Lagoon, the cutaways of like Frank and Joe aren't even, they're at like Amir's house. Like it's not even in the same place, and he's wearing the wig in one, he's not wearing the wig in the other. So, if you're playing Spot the Wig, this is a fun game, and if you see the wig, by all means take a shot. Samurai Cop will be a much more of a fun movie that way. But I mean, I have to give him kudos for, wearing this clearly obvious wig in ways that make it clearly look like a wig, yet still putting his all into the film.
That's dedication to a role, folks. 100% dedication to a role.
Mm-hmm. Like I have seen interviews with him after the fact. There's a phenomenal 2-part interview on YouTube with Red Letter Media, and he's talking about how, during those reshoots and whatnot, he was kind of pissed at this point. Like he kind of mentally given up on the role. But I mean, I'll give him full credit. There's scenes in this where I think he's really good in this. One of those ones is when he's sitting down with Jennifer at dinner, and he's talking about how he like climbed over the fence to steal someone's chicken, and he, because he really wanted to impress her. And I'm like, say what you will about this film, but he's actually kind of charming in that scene.
There's that, and then there's when Jennifer jumps into the pool holding her nose, and he goes, well, that looked really professional.
There are parts where it looks like they're having fun. I mean, I fully understand. Like, going back to the fight scene with Okamura, okay? Let's put it down on Front Street. Gerald Okamura is a 5th degree black belt in Kung Fu Sansu, okay? This guy knows what he's doing. Right. And in watching that interview with Van Hannon about this, Amir apparently was saying like, oh, don't worry, I'll make you look good in post, which anyone who says I'll fix it in post, don't do that to your editor. Please don't. Speaking as an editor, don't do that to your editor. OK, fix it in fix it on location. But, for him to like, I guess he was a little intimidated by someone like Okamura's understanding of Bushido and Kung Fu and Taekwondo and the whole works, but damned if he didn't give it a good try.
I didn't realize that he didn't know martial arts because of his dedication to this role.
Well, I mean, like there's one scene where, like, I guess he grabs Okamura's arm and all that, and he does this weird. No, it was in the fight with Robert Zadar, and he does this thing with his fist where he sticks his thumb out in between the fist. I'm like, if you hit someone with that, you're going to break your damn thumb.
He was going to grab his nose. He was going to take his nose. That's all that was.
That's it. That is literally the samurai move of I've taken your nose. You must give it to me now. I get it now. Let's move on to Mark Fraser, Frank Washington in this. The most memeable person in this entire film. If memes didn't exist, when they didn't in 1991, I'm sure some of the reaction shots that he gave in this probably gave idea to the meme itself, because there are some takes to the camera that are just like, oh.
The nurse scene itself. My wife asked this morning, like, did somebody out there do a supercut yet of just his reaction shots?
Not yet, but I'm sure someone will now.
Please do.
When they were making this film, apparently Matt and Mark were basically, they were like, okay, I get it. It's kind of like a Lethal Weapon kind of thing. But rather than be a Lethal Weapon, and I could see how Matt Hannon was kind of going for that Mel Gibson like role in Lethal Weapon, but rather than be more like Donald Glover, Mark Fraser came off a little bit more like Jones from Police Academy with some of those looks.
Donald Glover, I don't think was alive yet. I think you might mean Danny.
Danny Glover, yes. Sorry, my bad.
I hate to be that guy. I'm sorry, but I am that guy, so I don't really hate to be that guy.
That's
so,
okay. I'm the idiot in the basement with the microphone, so that's okay. I own all my mistakes. It's all good.
Fair enough. Well, you mentioned that it doesn't really go for Lethal Weapon, but there are two things I notice every time I watch this movie, and one is they steal an entire subplot from Lethal Weapon 2. And then years later, somehow Lethal Weapon 4 rips a bit of this movie off, just with the what were the triads? Mm-hmm. But then going into the guy's restaurant and harassing the guy at his restaurant is right out of Samurai Cop. But they used it for Uncle Benny in the fourth one, and the subplot from 2 was going after all the cops at their homes.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact that you had it in Lethal Weapon 2, it was a South African crime syndicate as opposed to the Katana gang. What's funny? I'm glad you mentioned Lethal Weapon 2, because stepping away from Mark Fraser for a second, Janice Farley, who played Jennifer, as I'm watching her in this, and I actually quite enjoyed her in this, but she reminded me a lot of Patsy Kensit in Lethal Weapon 2, and I was really when you see that parallel and you realize that Lethal Weapon might have been the template for what they were hoping to get out of this. Janice Farley did a very good job with this.
She does a very good job of the character that she's playing. Now, where you say she reminds you of Patsy Kensit in Lethal Weapon 2, she reminds me more of... Sorry, hold on. I got to look this up because it's going to bother me now. Corinne Burr, who was Bob Goldthwait's love interest in Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol.
Oh, God. A 0% movie, if ever there was one, and it is one.
Oh, no, that would be 5 and 6 and 7.
Oh, no, Citizens on Patrol. I've looked this up. Citizens on Patrol also has a 0 rating.
I must go and rate that so I can help with the algorithm.
At least, Police Academy 5 gave us a pre-married to Wayne Gretzky performance from his future wife.
Fair.
Mm-hmm. Plus, it was Miami Beach, so, it's all good. But, I mean, the thing with Janice Farley is that she's clearly putting a lot into this role. And I think of everyone in this film, especially of all the women in this film, because, let's be honest, the roles for the women aren't exactly evolved. Hers actually isn't that bad. Her
and her mother, although her mother is kind of like the, he gives you money, you should stay with him type. So maybe not the mother. But yeah, she's the only one that's not there as a host for Samurai Cops. She's not there to keep it warm.
Mm-hmm. Best film mom since the woman who played Meredith Salinger's mom in Dream a Little Dream.
That's exactly who I was thinking of when you said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Piper Laurie.
Oh, dear God. We have just referenced Dream a Little Dream in a Samurai Cop film, and I'm kind of here for it. Let's continue on with the women here. Melissa Moore, who played Peggy. I mean, if this were Police Academy film, since we're making these references here, she's Callahan. There's zero question.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she is the horned up cop and whatnot, and possibly the template for what Amir may have done, or at least written when writing the role of Peggy. But I mean, it was funny. I mean, she at no point did she like take anything too seriously. For lack of a better term, sex was just a thing for her. The fact that she was like, "Hey, preacher, we're not doing anything." Meanwhile, you're about to storm my house, but we're not doing anything. You want to like, seriously.
Or, come to my place before they do that. Use it before you lose it.
Right? Like, here is a very free woman who knows exactly what she wants. I'm just curious, though, and I recognize that she appears in Samurai Cop 2, but I'm just wondering if, like, the whole post torture from the burning grease scene, if that was supposed to be, because we never see from her again. So I'm curious to see Samurai Cop 2 and what happened to her.
Here's my guess, okay? Nothing. It's going to show no scars. It's going to be exactly like how Dar has Kodo and Podo again in Beastmaster 2, even though Kodo died killing Mayax to save Dar.
See, it's either that or they're going to go full Fennec Shand and she's a cyborg, seeing as how it's in the future and in space.
True. Fair.
I'm all for Cyborg Peggy. That's all good. And then we need to talk about Cameron, the red-headed assassin. Here's the funny thing. What was her role? Because aside from being hot redhead assassin, basically what was it, Robert Sadar's side piece at that point? Because she didn't really do anything.
I wonder if there's deleted scenes of her just announcing the boss every time he shows up, or if it's just that one scene of exposition right in the beginning where she's like, "Here comes the boss," and then that's one of 4 or 5 lines of dialogue she has the entire film.
I mean, that's about as useful as the computer in Galaxy Quest, which Sigourney Weaver would just repeat until she realized that she was doing the same thing and repeating the computer.
It's a stupid job, but she's going to do it.
Right? Like, even when they go talk to, like, the other triad family or whatever and all that, like, everyone's fighting and everyone's shooting each other, and she's just like, I'm just going to sit here and nod. That's pretty much it.
Also, she doesn't understand how Uzi clips work. She shoots 4 shots and then changes the clip and then just gets shot dead anyway.
Clearly, the Yakuza budgets in 1991 are low and bullets cost quite a bit. But I mean, I was curious to see what they were going to do with her, if they were going to do anything with her. I mean, she had the look, and because she was, she had done stunts for like Pulp Fiction, we knew that she was an athletic woman. I mean, they could have turned this into maybe, for lack of a better term, a Black Widow role. I mean, the red hair is kind of a thing, but I mean, or maybe someone like a Sharon Stone from Total Recall. That could have been an interesting, like, where, in the pantheon of expendable henchmen, she's actually one of the more lethal ones, but instead, she goes out very, very quickly in the last gun battle scene. Like, it felt like she was there for looks, and she could have done so much more had it been written for her.
Fair enough. I think the main goal of her character was to completely interrupt a chase scene by disrobing.
Pretty much.
And the chase scene gets incomplete. And you kind of like, if you're a guy in 1991 watching this movie, you're 15 or 16 going, you forget that there's a chase because all of a sudden, like you said, beautiful redhead.
Right.
Who was also an Out for Justice as a go-go dancer.
When you take a look at some of the filmographies, and that's the thing, like, some of these actors do deserve quite a bit better, and I think she would have done much better with a bigger role, that, like, just a bit more mystique to her. A bit more mystique, and then have her be one of the, if you're looking at a movie like this, like a video game, she's not the big boss level. That's Yamashita. but at least, a level clearing boss that you have to kind of get by. And, the fact that they kidnapped Jennifer to make Matt Hannon enraged kind of thing. If something had happened to, the no-name redheaded assassin, that would have at least given a bit more motivation for Yamashita as well. It's just kind of a missed opportunity, I think. But that's just me.
Fair enough.
Speaking of Robert Z'Dar, literally the only person I had really heard of before watching this film. I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of impressed with how restrained he was. Because when you listen to people like Okamura and people like Fujiyama and I fully recognize that some of their dialogue was actually done by other people in post as ADR because they didn't have the budget to bring those people in on time to do it.
Come here, we want to talk.
Oh my God. Oh. If the sign of a movie is that it's quotable, but these are the lines that you're quoting, does that make it a good movie? That is the existential question here. But Robert Z'Dar is very stoic in this. Like, he's big, he's menacing, and that he's on that razor wire of like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to menace you into doing what we want to do, or I'm going to finish you, and that's pretty much that.
Fair enough. Pretty much almost every role he plays anyway. Go on, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I kind of wish that they had made a Hercules film around that time, because he would have made a very good Hercules. He
would have been great. It's a shame that he's like known for like these little B-movie roles that he's taken on. Tango. It's also a shame that people don't understand the genius that is Tango and Cash. But he had the look, and like you said, he's reserved. He knows when to get loud. He knows even his stares. If you watch his stares in this movie, he needs to look menacing. He needs to look kind of angry. He needs to look really angry and menacing. He just needs to look like he's in the room, or going back into a laundry basket.
Oh my God, that scene. For those of you who have not seen this movie, there's this scene where Cameron is dressed up like a nurse to get into the room where they're keeping the Char baby burn victim to try to get to silence him from ever speaking again. Which, coincidentally, if you notice that the room that they keep the burn victim in is right beside the dentist's office, so I'm questioning the hospital choices at this point. But she's wheeling in this cart saying, like, I have to go get the garbage. Lifts the blanket up, and up rises Robert Z'Dar very, very slowly, very menacingly. But I'm just like, it's shot from high up, so he doesn't look as menacing as could be because of the camera angle. And, some of the camera angles in this are just so bad. And considering what they framed on, we will eventually talk about the giant lion's head at the Blue Lagoon office.
We need to, because I love the set design of that office.
But the fact that he just gets up out of this laundry linen thing from a hospital. Oh, and
then he fillets that guy's neck like he's cutting sushi. It's just so slow and delicate to remove somebody's head.
Meanwhile, we're focusing on Cameron, who's looking at this like, oh, okay, I want the side of the cake with the extra icing. That's pretty much her reaction on this one. But he brought a bit of gravitas to the role of Yamashita. Probably more so this movie might have actually deserved, and that's a credit to Robert Z'Dar, like just being an absolute pro in this.
I agree 100%.
Let's talk about Fujiyama, the head of the Katana Gang. Here's another person that I found was actually very well cast in this, and say what you will about this film, it makes sense that he's the head of the crime family, because he's that head that doesn't want to do the dirty work himself. He doesn't, and he just gets everyone else to do it. He played that perfectly.
I don't know why we needed the exposition to say, hey, he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to be tied to it. But whether he does it or not, he's tied to it. This is how the law works, guys.
I mean, I will admit that some of the dialogue, from everybody really feels like descriptive video at times. But Like he comes in and then all of a sudden like, we cut the camera. It's like, here comes the boss. And it's like, oh, good. Descriptive video. This is good. I don't actually have to watch it. But when you think about like those early 90s, and I will admit I had a mullet back then. Shamefully, I will admit that. Trust me, there's no mullet happening now. But I mean, that was the look of bad guys in films in the early 90s. Like evil mullets and suits were the thing. And here he was fitting the role perfectly for the time, not overacting too much. Like he made sense. He absolutely made sense as the business boss of the Katana Gang.
Well, it would make sense that he would make dollars. Boom, boom.
Oh, man.
Thank you for the courtesy laugh. I appreciate that.
Moving on to Gerald Okamura. All right. The one guy who actually knew what he was doing when it came to all the sword fighting and whatnot, because he's used on a number of films as a consultant for that kind of stuff. I have to say, when you put someone, this surprises me because we mentioned that fight scene earlier between him and Joe Marshall, and how like he clearly knows what he's doing and Joe doesn't, and you were surprised because you thought Joe actually knew something about, you know, quote unquote being a samurai. I wonder how much of that training that Okamura did, perhaps, you know, before shooting, was conveyed to him, because he maybe the most, I want to say intimidating, because Robert Zadar was very intimidating, but next to Zadar, he was probably the most intimidating guy in the Katana Gang,
especially as far as ability goes.
Oh, I mean, and thank God he locked his window so he didn't get jumped by Frank and Joe trying to climb in while he was, you know, trying to have sex, and then running around in his underwear, or
trying to learn how to have sex, then running around in his underwear, past the centipede game. How many times?
Oh, yeah, yeah. If you're looking for titillation, this might not be the film you're looking for. It's yeah, PG-13 maybe with PG sensibilities, or is that the other way around?
Maybe that scene, but there's some R-rated stuff going on. Like, we do see a lot more of our redheaded friend than you usually see in a film like that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would say that was more of a PG 1992, not a PG 1983, where you would see a lot more with him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the fight scenes I think were better with him because obviously he's trained in that, so he probably would have trained the people who he was fighting with. So that brought a lot more to the fight scenes, and clearly knows how to put a wig back on a head, because it was that fight scene that the wig popped off, and you don't even need to look for it. It'll just happen. You'll see it. And he's such a gentleman about it too. Well, I'm going to beat the out of you, but I'm not going to take this wig off. Yeah, exactly. That is the way. That is the Bushido way. We fight with our wigs on. One person I have to bring up in this one. His name is Joselito Rescobar, and I'm hoping I got that name right.
Oh my God, and I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yep, the Costa Rican waiter.
What a fantastic choice to make these acting decisions, to be so flamboyant and insanely flamboyant. Like, ooh, he shot himself in the head. Like, this is getting the man erect.
Do you know who he reminds me of? You've seen Airplane.
Yes.
There's the one guy at the control tower, and for the life of me, his actual name escapes me. But, like, you know, someone will say something and then he'll walk in all flamboyantly go, and someone is shaking. Like,
looks like Leon's getting larger.
Right.
I can make a brooch, a pterodactyl, a hat. I know exactly who you're speaking of.
Yeah, and I wonder if Joselito Escobar actually looked at that role and said, I want to be that guy, because that's what he did. Now, I took a look at his IMDb, his filmography. There are 5 movies with Joselito Escobar in them. The first 4, of which Samurai Cop is one, all written and directed by Amir Shervin, the writer and director of this one. The 5th movie was made after Amir Shervin had passed away. It was Samurai Cop 2. So,
oh, wow.
So,
oh, my God. Sold. That's, if there was one thing that would sell me on jumping on seeing Samurai Cop 2 any sooner, it is that gentleman.
Right? Joselito Escobar, the Costa Rican waiter. We don't care what his character's last name is. He's Costa Rican. It would have taken forever, according to Joe Marshall.
Maybe we'll find out his last name in the second movie, and it's probably twice as long as his first.
Oh, more than likely. Likely.
I'm so excited. I'm delighted to hear this.
Oh, man. But that's the funny thing, too. Like, when you have filmmakers like this, you see them like enjoying working with the same actors over and over again. We've talked about this on this show with directors like Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith. The work, and Adam Sandler, the work with your friends rule. And it's clear that the relationship between Amir Shervin and Joselito Escobar probably was that the work with your friends rule, and knowing that backstory, knowing that he was in like four of his last films before passing away, makes that role a bit more bittersweet and kind of fun when you watch it. So, kudos to the most flamboyant character of Samurai Cop, being the Costa Rican waiter. You're a musician. I'm a musician.
I like to think so. Yeah. I know you are. Yes, yes.
We need to talk about this soundtrack.
All right.
Because I was wondering what PlayStation 1 game I was playing at the time when the music kind of came in. As you're watching this, does the music fit for you, or is it just one of those things where like, oh, dear God, someone pulled out the Nintendo and made it a soundtrack?
The chase scene that gets interrupted by some nudity, and also a never completed chase scene nor completed love scene. There's a lot of incomplete in this movie. The music, I found myself focusing on it going, wow, like this is something I could actually hear Dream Theater covering as a goof.
There are times, I'll admit, there are times when Jordan Rudess's keyboard tone sounds a little video game-esque. And I love Dream Theater. Like, I think Jordan Rudess is possibly the most talented keyboard player, playing live music today. But
Rick Wakeman is still out there, my friend.
Yes, but I don't listen to Rick Wakeman and all of a sudden think of all the Vince DiCola 80s soundtracks that I have watched in the past.
Vince DiCola is also still touring.
There you go.
Yeah, but I agree with you about Jordan. Very, very nice human being, one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And yes, you're right about some of his sounds are very, Pac-Man. But I'm thinking more specifically that little flute melody, that keyboard wannabe pan flute Zamfir Karate Kid 2 melody that's going on in the background over this pretty progressive rock. It's like I was kind of like all on board with that piece of music because I was only dreaming that Dream Theater was playing it. The rest of the music, it's kind of like when you broke, how you'd break the Nintendo 2 cartridge, and maybe not Nintendo, let's say Vectrex, and the music just decided to want to be like, and that's the rest of the soundtrack. It's just, we're going to have a conversation now. It doesn't fit any scene except for that chase scene. Right. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I knew I was in for a musical ride when the title card comes up, like right off the beginning, and the music seems to cut in not on the one beat, not even on the end, the 4 end beat. by the way, if you're not a musician, time signature is a big thing. The fact that it felt like they kind of, they bumped the record at the start of actually recording the soundtrack for it, and it kind of jumped in mid-bar. It's just one of those things where, I mean, some of the music things are just hilariously bad in an 80s A-Team kind of feel, where Robert Zadar will stand up to look menacing at the table after Joe disses the Katana Gang, da 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 da, like, oh god.
Though, now that I think about it, and the way you mentioned that, can you imagine if Mike Post had scored this film?
Right?
How badass would that score have been? I love some Mike Post, sir. The king of the 80s.
I mean, once again, up there with Vince DiCola. Like, when you think about Transformers the movie, when you think about Rocky IV, those Vince DiCola instrumentals were, that was 86, 87 right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. And he did, there was something else DiCola did that I loved, and now it's just not coming out. Do you know that DiCola sent a copy of his score for Transformers to Keith Emerson, because Keith Emerson is the reason he was playing synths, and it's a very ELP-inspired score, apparently, according to Mr. Vince DiCola.
Oh, wow. I mean, if you didn't have one of those Rocky training montage instrumentals in your head in the 80s, you weren't 80s-ing right. But it definitely...
Hearts on Fire!
Right. Oh, I love the Rocky IV soundtrack. Like, listeners understand, like, Sean and I both know the guys from Playlist Wars. Love those guys. They're great. If they ever did a bad movie, great soundtrack episode, the Rocky IV soundtrack is getting hit hard. Like,
that movie would not exist, nor would it have a soundtrack if you got rid of all the montages.
Right? There are an equal number of montages in that film, I think, than there were in Dream a Little Dream, and that's the second Dream a Little Dream reference we've dropped in this episode. Oh, dear God.
Dream a Little Dream only has 3 that I can think of. Into the Mystic, which also sets off the story. This is not a Dream a Little Dream episode. Also one of my top 10 favorite films. Mm-hmm. And soundtracks.
But yeah, I'd be curious to kind of... we need a Samurai Cop song, which Dave Matthews Band's fans will sit there and say, well, there is a Samurai Cop song, because he wrote a song called Samurai Cop. It has nothing to do with the movie. Apparently, when he wrote the song, Samurai Cop was just playing on a TV in the background, and the title just stuck. So Dave Matthews Band has a song called Samurai Cop. Has nothing to do with Samurai Cop. The movie was just on in the background. It's actually quite a nice song. So, kudos to Dave Matthews Band for introducing many more people to Samurai Cop. Because you're sitting there listening going, yeah, this seems to be one of those really nice songs. Everything's going well in life. And he's not mentioning anything about a Samurai Cop. I don't get it. I don't get it. Now you know.
I kind of want to hear him just, some of the dialogue. Do you like what you see? I love what I see.
Dave Matthews Band needs to actually do a theme song for an eventual Samurai Cop 3. That would be just...
I kind of want to just go back and rescore the first movie myself, but more of a progressive rock, progressive metal, like Vince DiCola meets Train of Thought era Dream Theater.
All performed by Spectre General. If you're getting a band from that.
Oh, Kick-Axe. The real name of that band is Kick-Axe.
Yeah.
And I have Welcome to the Neighborhood on vinyl, which has a great cover with a little help from my friends on it, the Joe Cocker version. Obviously, it's their version. But yeah, there was something to do with the band name legally that they had to go as Spectre General on the Transformers soundtrack.
Probably because, Kick-Axe sounds like Kick-Ass, and it's a kid's movie. I kind of get that. I do kind of get that. But let's talk about one of the biggest things about this film, and that's the dialogue. How many times after this movie do you tell someone to keep it warm?
I think I'm going to start.
You keep it warm, all right?
Because nobody's going to know what I'm talking about unless they've seen it. And then, but then you're looking at some harassment charges depending on where you say it and whom you say it to. So I'll start by saying it to just random people at the supermarket.
Right. If someone comes back and says
it's creepy.
If someone comes back and says it's warm and ready to go, run. Just run.
Well, wait. Why? What if I like what I see? What if I'm thinking to myself, bingo? You know what I'm going with that.
Since you put it like that, we need to talk about the dialogue in the horny nurse scene. We have to, because this is one of those scenes. Like, this movie kind of flew under the radar for a bit, and then someone in the early days of YouTube put a clip of this movie up on YouTube, and it is literally listed the horny nurse scene. Where did she come from? Where was she going? Why did she care so much on whether he was circumcised? Like, there's just so much questioning, and I couldn't even, like, I don't know if she was ever in any other films. Like it's just so out there.
I mean, with her delivery versus his delivery, because he's all in on that scene. Mm-hmm. It's one of those scenes where he's very much like, oh yeah, I can act the shit out of this, and he's probably not even acting. He's like, oh, who's this woman hitting on me? Let me get every like quintessential 80s guy reply ready to go in the chamber, keeping it warm.
I need to draw a comparison for her delivery of the lines. I'm assuming you've seen Boogie Nights.
That's one of my favorite films of all time.
The first film that Dirk Diggler does.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
Right? And Julianne Moore is sitting there behind the desk and like, I think I need to see your credentials. And she walks around and grabs this. This is a giant like that's the same delivery that you get. The only difference is that is a fictional porn movie, and this is Samurai Cop.
And she's saying this is not a giant enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why doctors get insurance. Like, what? Who writes this down? But apparently that scene was as scripted. The dining with chicken scene, apparently a lot of that is a little bit on the improv side, according to Matt Hannon.
Wow. Improv, huh?
Improv.
Well,
but
hey, don't worry. I got enough.
Right.
It's big.
Oh no, he was a good doctor.
Oh, yeah. Because at 2 months, 3 months old, he's a great doctor. Absolutely.
He was a good doctor. Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting, though, because like that scene, in all fairness, that scene was a little on the wooden side. The dinner with Jennifer scene was a bit more relaxed. There's the scene where they're climbing. Well, sorry, Joe climbs over the fence and Frank goes under the fence. And Joe goes like, why'd you climb under there? I'm an undercover cop. And then, of course, Frank looks to the camera like, and it's
I love every time Frank looks at the camera and he's just like, hey, I know you guys are watching this and taking this as seriously as I am.
Right. But
I do have a speech prepared if you'd like to hear it.
I would, absolutely.
Okay, well then here we go. Now I'm telling these son of a bitches that we respect the Japanese of this country, who are honest businessmen. And yeah, this is the land of opportunity for legitimate business, not for death merchants who distribute drugs to our children through schools and on the streets. Now I'm telling these motherfuckers that if they continue killing our children to make their precious millions that they deposit in their secret Swiss bank accounts, counselor, before your last suit even gets off the court clerk's desk, I'll have their stinking bodies in garbage bags and ship them back to Japan for fertilizer. Got it?
And you too.
That's right.
I mean, here's the funny thing. Like, when you think about movies that came out around that time, right? And we're talking like Lethal Weapon 2. Like, there was a whole drug running thing that was like an underlying story. RoboCop 2. Like, there was this like, drug underground storyline. And this was, and I fully appreciate that this was around the quote unquote war on drugs thing that the American government was really pushing at the time. So I wonder how much of that speech was influenced by the other movies that came out around it. And I mean, I'll admit I'm a Canadian, right? So we didn't really have, we saw what we saw on the news kind of thing, but we don't know. I personally don't know the environment that surrounded that whole thing around that time.
It was empty slogans. And I would like to jump on my pedestal for a few seconds here and say that if you need slogans and catchphrases to make decisions on anything, whether it's a purchase you make in a store or who's going to lead your country. You're an idiot and you should stay at home. But there was empty slogans like hugs, not drugs, dare, which I can't even remember what it stood for. But in 1994, there was a survey that showed it had 0% impact either way. Dare actually, I believe, stood for drugs are really excellent. There was this war on drugs because I don't think the government was getting enough money as kickback from the big dealers.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of, let's get the celebrities out there to say drugs are bad, and then they're going to go back to their trailer and do a whole load of cocaine.
Oh my God, yes. You look at the 80s and you can see decisions made purely under the influence of cocaine. And it's just, sometimes I feel like, man, I wish I was like 10 years older in the 80s and I was a big cokehead just to experience some of just the insane that happened around that time period. I'm glad I didn't, but wow, look at all these decisions. Like somebody said, hey, let's give this guy some money to make his Samurai Cop film, cocaine.
But the funny thing is that speech happens, and I don't remember seeing anyone doing drugs in the film or even making a drug deal. It's a film called Samurai Cop, and I counted it. We saw our first sword half an hour in, I think. Except for that one fight scene when they go to try to put the muscle on the Japanese cops. But I mean, there's a severe lack of samurai going on in a film called Samurai Cop, especially when you realize that Frank Washington did most of the kills himself.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But here's where I have to defend this film. And let's call it like it is here. It's poorly made. It's low budget. It's campy. It is. It's so bad, it's good. And when you think about what cinema is supposed to be, at its most base, it's escapism. If you walk out of a film with a smile on and you had a good laugh and you feel pretty good, then the film did its job. You walk out of Samurai Cop and you had a whole ton of good laughs because the film is that bad that it's actually good. You remember it more than a middling high budget film because the scenes are that bad. It's a good time. It's an hour and a half that's actually a really good time because it is so transcendentally awesome in its badness.
Yes and no. Because you mentioned earlier the set design in Jennifer's office. We have this wonderful abstract painting behind her desk. And as we move over, we see a bunch of books. Roots is very standoutish. And then the lion's head made out of yarn. Somebody said, hey, this looks perfect. Let's put this in this movie. Let's have this look for this office. Somebody's going to take this woman seriously. She has a yarn lion's head. She's got this beautiful abstract art behind her, and she read Roots. What else could you ask for?
Not to mention the fact that they framed the shot so that lion's head was definitely in it. Like this wasn't just background stuff. And again, watching that interview with Matt Hannon, like apparently they filmed it like a friend of Amir's house kind of thing, and they actually had that lion on their wall in real life. And they're like, oh,
somebody's
cool.
Kid made it. Yeah, somebody's kid made it, and they were like, oh, well, we've got to keep it up here, and they should hopefully. I hope that kid kept going to school and stopped making lion's heads. I hope they stayed creative.
Although that being said, if my kids came home with that lion head, I would absolutely put it up on the wall in my office and be very, very proud of it. It's kind of funny. It is kind of
Would
funny.
you buy a slew of books, though? Would you buy like a copy of Roots and whatever all those other books were and kind of get a bookshelf next to where you would put that lion's head?
Oh, absolutely.
Good. Because, we're going for authenticity here.
In fact, I would have two bookshelves, one on either side of the lion and a chair under the lion. So if someone came into my lion reading room, they would see me sitting under the lion's head surrounded by books. That is the ideal library at this point. This needs to now happen. I am kicking my 10-year-old out of the house and taking over his room and making that room into reality. Sorry, kid. One of the things, though, and we talked about the whole working with your friends rule about films, is that it really felt like there was a good friendship between Matt and Mark as they were filming this. You didn't feel any tension amongst the actors. And the fact that a lot of them came back for Samurai Cop 2 almost 25 years later, that says a lot about at least the camaraderie on set. And I mean, you've seen bands and you've been in bands where and you know the rule, right? If the band is having fun on the stage, the crowd is having fun. Mm-hmm. There's no question about that. Everyone looked like they were having fun in the roles, especially Matt and Mark together.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I would say Matt, Mark, and Dale Cummings, who is the chief. Those scenes are all beautifully written, beautifully acted, especially by Dale Cummings. That guy is committed to that role, too. Oh,
and how long he held that finger pointing at the door after Mark gave him the kiss on the head. Get back here, you mother...
I feel like somebody shoved something up my ass, and it hurts, and I got to figure out how to get it out.
I have a club up my ass.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Oh. I want that on a shirt now. I just literally want him leaning back in the chair with his eyes closed like he did at the end of that scene saying, there's a club up my ass, and I got to find a way to get it out. And again, the only person that will respond to that T-shirt is the person in the grocery store who says, yeah, it's warm and ready.
Yeah.
Like literally that is the Samurai Cop mating call is that shirt with the chief on there with that look. Okay, Sean, it has come to that point that we do in every show. Who is your MVP of 1991's, and I can't believe it's 1991, Samurai Cop?
Oh, it's without a doubt Dale Cummings as the captain.
I'll admit, I was surprised to find that whole kiss on the forehead scene, which, by the way, was preceded by the Mark Fraser lick lip, looking straight at the camera, which is creepy as hell, but, you know, go ahead and go kiss your cop with moist lips, which in the pandemic era, not cool. But the fact that scene was apparently scripted that way. That wasn't an improv. That was apparently scripted. So yeah, I can completely see. And yeah, like he wasn't the corrupt police chief that was on the take from the Katana gang. You know, the fact that, you know, he was very much the Lethal Weapon version of the police commissioner. Like when the backs are up against the wall, the commissioner's got your back, or the chief has got your back, kind of thing. So I can completely see that. But for me, my MVP is Mark Fraser, Frank Washington. The most memeable guy in this film, had the absolute best lines. And if you were to take that film, give it a budget, and remake it, even in the same era, and recast it, I still want him in the role. Oh,
100%. 100%. Nobody else can do that.
Oh, absolutely. Possibly a better cop sidekick than Danny Glover. I would go that far.
See, now you got me splitting hairs here, and I don't want to make that choice, so I won't.
Because Danny Glover was just complaining about being too old, and you know that's like me after a gig.
Well, you Riggs, you son of a bitch! You know, it wasn't just being too old. Riggs was a son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm. Right. It does bear though. I would be curious if you were to watch Lethal Weapon or Lethal Weapon 2 back to back with Samurai Cop. You really have to wonder how many comparisons are there.
Oh, the first time I watched this, I had a list of what was from Lethal Weapon 2 and 1, and then I had a list of things that Lethal Weapon 4 took from it.
Mm-hmm. Like,
there's a lot.
If that's your template for making a buddy cop film kind of thing, you really couldn't do bad. And with a bigger budget, I think Samurai Cop could have been, you know, if not something special, definitely something that would have lived earlier on DVD and VHS. But you realize that somewhere down the road, we're going to have to tackle Samurai Cop 2. Deadly Vengeance.
I'm all in.
All right. We will find a copy of that. We'll watch it. And Sean, you got to go down that road. You got to go down that Samurai Cop 2 road.
Just for the Costa Rican waiter.
Right? The fact that Joselito Escobar is in that film, for that alone, not to mention Bai Ling and Tommy Wiseau. I can't believe we're going down that road. But Sean, thank you so much for chiming in here with this film and for jumping on the show. Where can listeners find some of your music?
Well, thank you for having me on your show to interrupt you every now and then with my thoughts that I felt were more important than yours in that moment, which I never felt that my thoughts were more important than yours, but it's very rude to interrupt people, so people do not take a cue from me. Be a better guest. I can be found on Twitter at Sean Faust. You can find my music at SeanFaustMusic.com, but what I would really like to promote is the album Land by Money for the Toll. It's available on iTunes, Amazon, anywhere you can stream and purchase music. You will find Land by Money for the Toll. Progressive rock, hard rock. I'm really, really, really proud of this album, and I just want everybody in the world to own a copy of it because, you know, I'm that proud of it. And if it turns out 10 years from now that that's The Room, I'll be happy. But it's not. It's better than that.
I'm now curious if there is an album out there that could be considered The Room of albums.
Is it Chinese Democracy from Guns N' Roses?
You know what? That's the first album that came to mind.
Same.
That is absolutely the first album that came to me. Even though I don't mind Madagascar as a song, but yeah, that is absolutely the first album that came to mind. That's kind of scary. Okay, Sean, thank you so much for this. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of It's Not That Bad. Now, you know the drill. If you think there's a movie out there that is unfairly maligned or you think is so bad, you know, kind of like this one, that there is no way in hell that we can find anything good to say about it, hit me up on Twitter at NotThatBadCast. We will dissect it. We will watch it lovingly and painfully and find the good things to say because we are looking for those A grades in B movies. Sean, thank you once again for this. To our listeners, thank you. Until next time, I'm Jay. Take care.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.